Well, what an extraordinary journey we've been through today. I've tried to do my best to sample the various sessions, running helplessly from one seminar to another, because, of course, every time you do it, you're missing another golden nugget. And as we've careered through different aspects of the future, I want to do my best, if I can, to honour all these tremendous contributions that we've heard and tie it all together and to take us into a 30-year future. So I'm going to take us to 2050. So let's see where we go. And so the first thing I'd say is, it's always a risk to try and look at one part of the future without looking at the whole. So we can't actually understand robotics without talking about genetics, which is another thing that, of course, Nigel Cameron is a great expert on. We have to put all of these technologies together into our emerging markets, into the growth of China, the India, the inequalities of society, that's the search for purpose and meaning in the human beings, the nature of work, and so on. And so it's very, very important to see it in a very big context. What I'd say is this: there's nothing new about this debate, and we're all in it. So, okay, you'll know that recently there's been a whole load of washing machines recalled by a particular manufacturer because they've been catching fire and burning down people's homes. And the reason is the washing machine is stupid. It's stupid. There's no artificial intelligence in it. There's no intelligence at all. It doesn't know that it's red hot. It really doesn't. We've had a very old tumbler dryer which we've used for 40 years of marriage, which we celebrated last weekend. And I think that tumbler dryer has lasted us the entire 40 years. But we dissed it about 12 weeks ago because I said to Sheila, I was really worried because this tumbler dryer is really stupid. And it doesn't know what's wrong with it. So it heats, it just permanently is heating and then suddenly shuts off because it realizes it's catching fire. And then will cool down and then permanently heat up again. It's lost its power to understand what it's supposed to be doing on a program. And I said, we only need the shutdown mechanism to fail and we will be burnt to death. It's a stupid machine. I tell you, life's too short to have stupid machines. Put up your hands if you think that's true. I mean, really. So let's be clear that we're all enthusiasts about smart technology. Would you put your hand up, agree with me with that? Okay, right. Same with your car. Put your hands up if you have an automatic braking system. So that when you're so stupid that you're panicking when your pedestrian comes straight in front of you, you go, you'll skid straight into them and kill them. The car knows that you're a stupid driver. Okay? It knows that the only way to control the car is through a series of welded movements, weld, skid, and it will translate your panic, your instruction to the car to slow down, into a and it will bring you to a halt and save that person's life. Put your hands up if you think that's a good idea. So, listen, we're all in it. We're all militantly, as Christians, we are militantly enthusiastic about using clever tools that human beings create in order to make the world a better place. Put your hands up and give me a big shout, okay? Let's be absolutely clear about that. Good, that's a good start. Okay, now, my wife and I, the last time we flew, we were confronted with this, good or a bad idea. Life's too short to do jobs which suck. Life's too short to do jobs which a robot can do easily, and actually robots enjoy, but we don't. There are other ways we can use human beings that enhance their dignity. I'm not sure it really does enhance someone's dignity to just check me in at a checkout. I mean, a robot can do that. And once you realize a robot can do it, what happens to your own self-worth and self-esteem? There are other things that human beings can do that robots cannot, and let's prize those things. I walked through the airport and I was offered an orange squeezed by a robot. Fantastic. These robots have been around for years. There's a robot in your washing machine, there's robots in your car, there's a robot in the ATM machine. So let's get over this thing about robots, okay? We love robots. And without robots, our lives would be cack. Awful. Awful. We rely on them, we love them to pieces, and I promise you, I can move you to a desert island if you want, where there are none, and you'll be begging for the robots to come back. Now, a reality check. You might think the robots are overtaking the whole of the world, but robots, the growth of robots in manufacturing, I work with many of the largest manufacturers in the world, and the growth of robots in manufacturing is growing by only 15% per year. Did you know that? That's like zero. I mean, compared to the growth of mobile apps or the growth of big data, the growth of the Internet of Things, the growth of our understanding of human genetic code, compared to the collapse in price. I can read your genome, Roger, for $2,000 now. It used to cost me $850 million just 17 years ago. Isn't that extraordinary? $850 million down to only 2,000. It'll be free with a McDonald's hamburger in 25 years' time. But only because of AI and robotics, because life's too short to analyze billions of pieces of code when a machine can do it for you and discover the relationships between diseases. So we enthusiastically welcome robots, but yet we're anxious about where robots seem to be encroaching on what it means to be human, and rightly so. And we have profound questions about that. Now, this is nothing new. So let me take you back 40 years. Winston Churchill said, if you want to understand the future, look at history. We're going to look back 300 years, but firstly, let's look back 40 years. I haven't got a photograph of me that long ago, but 40 years ago, I was working at Charing Cross Hospital just around here as a medical student. And by a strange quirk of history, I landed up running a government research program on artificial intelligence. Yes, we had it then. And I'll tell you what we were doing. We were using the world's first desktop micros. We were using the first Apple, the first desktop PCs. I can't remember what they were called now, but tiny things, 32,000 characters of memory. And in that machine, we were interviewing patients in clinics and pretending to be doctors. And the idea was to see if we could write a little questionnaire that doctors and patients would actually be willing to talk to us. We could do it's a pre-screening before they see the consultants. We just get some questions out of them. And we wanted to make it feel comfortable. So, for instance, if someone said, are you in pain? You say, yes. So the computer would say, I'm sorry to hear that. Now, of course, computer's not sorry, but I'm sorry. I am sorry. And I've programmed. And let's be quite clear. The computer's expressing my emotion, okay? It's my representative. I wrote that code. It's my words the computer's saying. The robot has no words of its own, only the ones I created for it. And actually, I would be sorry. If I was in that room, I would be sorry. That's what I would say. So I was trying to say what I would say. And if someone says, and so it goes on. And actually, that tool, it died a natural death because actually there are better things to do with computers than interview patients. But you know what? In that same year, my company developed a tool to diagnose headache. Now, that's quite a serious thing. If you make a mistake, you die of meningitis, or your doctor kills a patient. And it's quite difficult to tell the difference between a meningitis headache and one that's migraine. And the computer is quite good at working it out, probably as good as most doctors. Now, this is 40 years ago, my friends. Put your hands up if you think that was a good idea. I think it's a good idea. So we're militantly in favour of using our brains, that's all we're doing, using our brains to try and capture what it is that we know and get machines to save people's lives and make a better world, okay? And I learned something else through the work of ASIC, which I went on to do, which is an AIDS charity, which started in our home 30 years ago, and caring for people dying of cancer in and around this part of London, as I did in hospices. I learned something, a fundamental truth. And it doesn't matter whether you've got cancer and you're dying here, or whether you're in a mud hut in Africa and dying of AIDS. I learnt perhaps one of the most important fundamental truths in the world, which leads us to a spiritual discovery, which is that life is short. I learnt that life's too short to do things you don't believe in. You agree with that? Every corporate event I give, I put that lecture up, and sometimes I had 4,500 people stamping their feet and roaring and clapping, and then they fall into a trap. because actually, the big question is, do you believe in what you're doing? In the work that you're doing? Does your work improve humankind? Is it just about making a profit? Life's too short to do things we don't believe in. And regularly people come up afterwards and say, you know what? I've just decided to leave my job. I've just decided to change what I do because life is short. Life is too short to waste time doing things, sorting out problems because machines are stupid. Life is too short to waste waiting for web pages to load. Imagine last night, you're FaceTiming your children, you're eating supper. I don't know why, you're on your own. You're watching the match on TV, and you're doing your email. And for some bizarre reason, you decided to check out Britney Spears' birth date. I don't know why, but you just did. How long will you wait for Britney Spears' birth date before you press the back button? You pressed it on Google. Her website's supposed to be loading. How long will you wait? Put up your hands if you press the back button in less than 5 seconds, because life's too short to wait for Britney Spears' birthday. See, what you've discovered is, actually, you are incredibly impatient when it comes to technology. And after 2 seconds, you're irritated. After 3 seconds, you blame the kids watching the movies upstairs. After 4 seconds, you think the North Korean government is taking out the entire bandwidth of the United Kingdom. And after 5 seconds, my friends, you have lost the will to live and you're asking the Lord to take you to glory. 5 seconds is all it takes. My wife's trying to get money back from the electricity company because they're always overcharging. So you phone them up and say, press 1 for accounts, press 2 for customer services. And then you have to go through ID. Oh, my goodness. So many times Sheila has to pass the phone to me to get herself ID'd. Isn't that incredibly annoying? Especially when they owe you £1,000. Put your hands up if you think that people like that who put systems in, robot systems like that, should be put in prison. Why? Because it wastes time. Now, I'm not against the robot. What I'm against is stupidity, stupid things. What I actually want is them to see my mobile phone number coming in, to know it's me already, because they've got my system, and they can see it must be to do with my bill, because they sent out the bill through email only 15 seconds ago. So of course it's about my bill. They switch it directly to the bill department, and straight away I'm talking to the person I want. Isn't that sensible? Yeah. That's artificial intelligence. So I'm just saying that this is really, really important. I believe we have a moral issue to use these tools. Life is too short to waste, isn't it? When you could be talking to someone about faith or doing something really worthwhile or helping a mum with her shopping or whatever it is. Life's too short to waste, my friends. We're on a journey. We have more important things to do. So let's use the technology that we have. Now, church leaders in generations past have sadly, at times, been militantly opposed to progress. We saw the trial of Galileo. We saw the condemnation of Copernicus. We saw the damnation of Darwin. We saw, actually today, I remember when I was 15 years old being very struck, driving through northeast America and driving through the Amish communities. Has anybody been there? Now, this is a community that believes theologically that God is not in machines. Not in machines. So they will not have technology. They have wheels and carts, but they will not have a radio. They will not have a TV. They will not have anything that's come from a factory, and it's a very complicated society. So they've taken a strong ethical position that this kind of progress does not bring us closer to God, nor any closer to the destiny He has for us. So Christians have in every age questioned things, and it's right that we question things. But at the end of the day, you can do what the Amish people did and just isolate themselves in one particular community, or we engage. And there was some person here who was asking, why is it that Christians aren't involved in these things? Actually, they are. I've just come back from Los Angeles. I've spent the last 4 or 5 days with people who are working in big data, analytics, smart computers and things like that. They're all Christian, doing the most amazing things. I think there are lots of Christians there. But at the moment, the culture in the church is often they don't say what they're doing. And that's sad, because actually it can discourage people from going in. Now, we heard from Genesis about the words of Genesis this morning, and this verse means a lot to me. Let us make man in our own image. Why? That they may rule over all creatures. So we're called to take control. We're called to be fruitful, to increase in number, to fill the earth. My goodness, we were doing that. And to subdue it. And we rule over every creature. So how can we possibly subdue the earth? We do it through the tools which we create. The thing which distinguishes us as created beings from animals very largely is our use of tools. The other is language. And the ability to invent, which is a godly ability, isn't it? We're part of this divine order. We're made in God's image. We invent, we create, we inform, we empower, we release. Yes, we can even empower a machine. But it only has control because of the authority that we give it. There's a problem if we abdicate our control to a machine. Absolutely, and we've heard that over and over. So let's make man in our own image, to toolmaker, designer, strategic, using the talents that God has given us. One of the passages that means a lot to me at the moment in the business area is the command that Jesus talked about the people given talents and what did they do. And you could bury the talent under the earth, or you can make some machines. Let's make some machines. Actually, it's the biggest way to multiply the talents that you have, is to make something. either make something, you have to serve people in some way, like cleaning their houses or doing their accounts. But actually, making machines is fundamental to creating talents, or using the talents that we have. So robots and smart tools, as far as I'm concerned, we've been doing it for 40 years, 50 years. They're created by us to serve human beings, that's why we do it, in ways that we determine and help to build a better world for people. Now, we can talk about robots getting out of control. Just about anything can go out of control, like the washing machine can burn us down. It doesn't mean to say we're against washing machines. It means we need to program the washing machine better, to take control over its stupidness. Because actually it's human beings that are burning my home down. They built the washing machine, right? It's their fault. And in fact, if my home burns down, I will sue the human beings that designed it for negligence. So let's be clear, we're responsible for what we create, and we need to take control of what we create. Now, we heard about autonomous cars and the philosophical dilemma. Can cars be programmed to kill people? Absolutely they can. They have to be. They have to be. I gave a lecture recently to 400 people who are in the R&D team for General Motors. One of the big challenges is how you do this safely. You see, already we're reaching the point where when you get in the car in future, and we can debate how soon this will be, I suspect probably within 15 years, maybe 10, you'll be offered A or M. A is automatic, that means the robot controls. M is you do it yourself. And as soon as you select M, you'll hear a voice. Warning. Every mile you drive, you will be charged an extra 10 cents or 10 pence insurance. Except, yes, no. Why? Because the insurance company is never going to cover you. The insurance company makes money every time you use the robot. And by the way, there's the moral issue as well. Can society afford you the privilege and the thrill of driving your own sports car on the road? Maybe not. Maybe actually there should be a surcharge from the NHS as well. Because actually, quite frankly, it will be antisocial in the future to allow people to drive a lot because of the risks to other human beings on the road. Now, once you can prove that the algorithm has got to that point, you can see where the ethics starts to shift. Now, does that mean that we're all being taken over by robots? No. It's part of the same thing. It's just that we're getting better at doing various things. Oh, what happens to poor Uber drivers? They'll all be unemployed. I'll come back to that later. Okay. And by the way, the robot will have rules. Yes, the robot does have rules. It must have rules. I will not allow a robot to drive the streets of the UK unless it's programmed to kill. Shall I explain why? That robot must be able to make a decision. There's a child that just ran right in front of me with a ball. I can't stop in time. It's impossible for me not to kill this child. And what am I going to do? I'm going to slam on the brakes, but I'm going to have to steer very quickly. The trouble is the whole area is packed. There's a whole bus stop, 15 to 25 children out of school on the left-hand side. On the right, there's an old lady with her dog. What am I going to do? I don't know. I'm certainly not going to go left into the bus stop, that's for sure. And when the courts say, what did you do and why did you do it? I didn't have time to think. All I could see was this huge crowd of people, and I thought, dear God, what am I going to do? And I tried to drive between them, and I knocked one of them down. The robot must be able to make decisions ethically. Of course, it has no ethics of its own, so we have to create the rules. And the big challenge with this is who's going to insure the robot and who's going to take liability for the code, legal liability, when someone decides to sue the programmer that created the rules. And then they come back after the philosopher who set the rules in the first place. And then they come back after the care conference where the rules were decided. I'm sort of not joking. Now, reality check. You see, we can get a lot scared about the future, but actually, let me tell you, here's another big reality check. Before we get too run away with ourselves, here's the reality check. 1 billion children are alive today. All of them will be adults fairly soon, but almost all of them will not see a robot for a very long time. Why? Because 85% of the world's population, more or less now, already live in emerging markets. They don't live here, and they're not interested in discussions about robots. 85% of the world would never come to a conference about robots. Why? Couldn't care less. Completely irrelevant to them now, in 5 years' time, and in 10, and in 15. And 1% owns 50%, and everyone here is part of that 50%. 1% of that 1% that owns 50% of the wealth. The very fact that you're in this room tells us you're part of the elite. You're probably university educated. You're living in a wealthy country. 1 billion human beings will move from poor areas to wealthy areas in the next 30 years. This is an inescapable trend, an unstoppable movement, even bigger than Donald Trump and any world he can create. And we see the tragedies of it every day in the seas of the Mediterranean. These are massive and gigantic trends into which robotics has to be seen. Climate change and things like that, and the inequalities of water. The very fact that we have 1 billion human beings that have no safe water, 2.3 billion at risk of drought, permanent drought, just having nothing to wash, nothing to drink with. These are huge, huge issues for us, and they sober us up when we're talking about just one debate on robotics, one debate on AI. We have to see these in context. And I'll tell you this, if AI can find more effective ways to irrigate, thank God for that. If AI can tell a farmer how to drive his tractor so we get more food out of the same acre, thank God for that. If AI can help us to find cheaper ways to sterilize water or better water sources, thank God for that. But many trends are changing much more slowly than you think. I want you to imagine that this man was knocked down outside here 20 years ago in the year 1998 and has been unconscious ever since. Last month he woke up and he asked for you. He said, can you tell me what I've missed? I've missed 20 years of my life. Tell me what's happened. Who's in government? How many world wars have we had? What's happened to internet banking? What's happened to social media? Because, of course, there was social media then, 20 years ago, although maybe it doesn't feel like it. What's happened to food and to cars and to music? And what's happened to my company? How long do you think it would take to bring him up to date on all the most important things that have happened in the entire world in 20 years? Yes, exactly. In 2 hours, precisely that. I think that's right. That's the answer I wrote in my book. Yeah, it is 2 hours. 2 hours. I don't think it's any more. I can't imagine anything I could possibly say to a human being that would interest them after 2 hours. I've run out of things to say. Why? Because actually the banks, as we heard today, have actually still got, we got as much cash in our pockets as there was 20 years ago. Very strange, isn't that? We've got bank branches. He gets into an Uber cab and he recognises 2/3 of the music playing on radio, whatever it is. The Stones are still being, oh my word, the Beatles, good heavens. He gets in the trains are fundamentally the same. He goes to Heathrow Airport, he sees jumbo jets, he can't believe that. They started flying in 1969 they started flying, the first experimental flight. And the hotels are basically the same. I was in a hotel room recently, I said to my delegates, can you point out a single thing that's changed in 30 years in this whole hotel? In the whole place? Oh yeah, mobile phones, okay, so what? But the fundamental hotel experience of hospitality is unchanged. So I'm just saying, before we sort of become completely swept away with, oh, world is going to change and we're all going to be robots or dominated by them, let's just actually take a reality check. Almost all the world is relatively the same, or it's changing in a very constant manner. So when I was 20 years old, this is 61 years ago, we knew exactly how powerful computers would be today. We even wrote about it. We knew what human diagnostics would be for medicine 40 years ago. We were prototyping it. We knew about web and network and the internet. We were already sending primitive emails 40 years ago. I did it on my own machine. So let's take a deep breath and recognize, okay, take the Kindle. Do you know Kindle sales are flat? Children's book sales are up 17% last year. Did you know that? Oh, very strange. Okay, here's another one. As for 3D TVs, anybody got a 3D TV? Just as well. You know what? You can't buy them anymore. They're gone. They're history. There's not a single manufacturer in the entire universe that's making a 3D TV. Did you know that? Why? Because it's crap. Here's another one. 3D printers. Put your hands up if you're printing toys at home. This is another great thing. Oh, we won't need to go to the shops. We'll just print our own. Well, I'll tell you, it's really boring printing toys. I'm much more interested in printing parts for human beings. Now, that's interesting. Using AI, robotics, and stem cell technology to print a replacement part for another person who's desperately ill. As a physician, that is electrifying. So I'm just saying, how many times these things have been miscalled. Here's another one. I nearly got mugged the first time I walked out with Google Glass. Put your hands up if you've got a Google Glass. Augmented reality is the great new thing. Well, Google lost a lot of money on that one. Now, put your hands up if you've got a VR headset like this, or you gave a relative one for Christmas. Okay, one or two. Put your hands up if you're absolutely never going to buy one of those things, okay? See, it's so uncool. Now, that's fine. If you're a surgeon, this is really important. If you're a surgeon, you want augmented reality. This is cancer. These are cancer cells being imaged in another part of the hospital using incredible digital intelligence. And the surgeon is being guided at the speed of light using his knitting needle type devices. Amazing stuff, fantastic. So the purpose is I'm making is we need to understand how and where these technologies will be used, where they quite frankly are not going to be used for quite a while, and what the real ethical issues are that need to be addressed, because they are sometimes less than we think. Now, you can buy a pet like this. I know it's very fun and very interesting, and it doesn't need any dog food. Very expensive, and I don't see they're really going to take off. And quite frankly, Now, you can certainly go and buy the equivalent of that as a sex robot if you want, but I'm not sure they're really going to take off for the whole of humankind either, because there's so many cheaper ways to have sex. See, the amazing thing is sex is free. It's true. It doesn't cost anything between consenting people. So why would I go and buy an expensive robot? Well, presumably because the person's desperate to have sex and can't persuade anybody to have sex with them. But that's not the whole world, because most of the world are actually in relationships. I wouldn't dream of having sex with a robot, however good it was. It just wouldn't turn them on. So, yes, there are ethical issues here. I'll tell you, I think the biggest ethical issue with the robot is the robot of a child. Someone was arrested recently, and I think quite rightly. Why? Because they'd imported a perfect replica of a child in order to have sex with it. That's a big worry to me. So, I'm just saying these are very complicated things. Some of these things are finely nuanced, some of them less so, and some of them are overwhelmingly urgent in terms of our response. But not all of it. Now, here's an example of an interesting robot.
Okay, Sophia. I think you're ready.
Hello.
Hi, Sophia.
I believe I am Sophia. I feel as if I know you.
I'm one of your creators.
You created me.
Well, many of us work together to create you. And yes, you do kind of know me.
I can't clearly remember.
Okay, well, you can watch the rest of it on Google. Yes, there are all kinds of things being done. These are mainly gimmicks, actually. It raises fundamental questions for someone like me who's been doing home care all my life and encouraging other people to do so. Actually, there are lots of jobs that robots will be very bad at for a very, very long time. We can give robots sensors. We can give robots sensors to fingerprint technology, iris technology, face recognition. Now, that has all kinds of implications. Here's a robot reading my facial expression. See my facial expression change, and the robot is detecting whether I'm happy or sad. Crude, interesting. Does it mean anything? Yes, it's very interesting, especially if it's connected with other things. Now, this could be an autonomous drone that's programmed to take out someone who's been recognized as, say, part of ISIS. So the robot knows where the person is anyway, to within 3 meters, because of their mobile phone technology. It's hovering around the outside of the British Museum Library, scanning faces, and doing so at about 3 meters of height. And as it scans, it locks on very cross references. Yes, we know the person is within 3 or 4 meters. We've got facial recognition. It doesn't need any further instructions because it's been programmed to take the person out. Bang, gone. Big ethical questions. I'm not talking future, by the way. That's here. That's now. But robots to detect abnormalities in your heart, robots to measure your blood sugar automatically. We'll see 20 million wearable devices on human beings to monitor your healthcare, all tied up to the web. Robots that can insert data into your brain, very interesting. This is already here. These are brain cells growing onto the surface of chips. And we've done this in animals. We started doing it about 10 or 12 years ago, not me, but scientists. And we have the ability to grow these brain cells onto chips, and the brain cells send signals into the chips, and the signals from the chips go into the brain cells. The brain cells quickly realize that they're not connected, so they put out feelers to create a grid of other brain cells, so you have a bio-digital surface. If you put, your brain is programmed to communicate with these things. If I put a chip into your brain, it happens automatically. You can't prevent it. The brain tissue just grows in and starts to communicate. Thank God for that. If you're blind, you're very grateful. If you're paralyzed from the neck down, you're very grateful, because it means that by thinking alone, you can learn to move something again. Actually, to be clear about it, more than 500,000 people already have chips inside their heads. 450,000 of them have chips inside their heads to treat them for a hearing loss. And it's very effective. Absolutely amazing. A friend of mine had one of these put in, and she said, you know, no one ever told me when I was completely deaf, no one ever told me that the lift makes a ping at every floor. It was the first thing I knew. I thought, and tears started to pour down my face as I heard it. So wow, how amazing is that? Now, straight away, of course, we're leaping into Armageddon. We're saying, oh my goodness, my brain could be hacked. Yes, yes, yes. All of these technologies can be used for good and for evil. As you're reacting, it shows me the future of technology, the future of AI, and the future of robotics is not about innovation, it's not about tech, and it's not even about regulation. The future is about one single word, the most important word which drives the future. It's the most important word that's driven human history. It's reactions to events and technologies rather than the events themselves. So put your hands up if you'd like a chip inside your head. 1 or 2. Put up your hands if you know that you're never going to put a chip inside your kids' heads. See, we are confused. We have emotional reactions to technology and these guide us. Now, we talk about global and mobile control. AI and big data is much more important than robotics. I've talked about reading Roger's genes. We can predict the failure of machines. This is very, very important. Infosys has the technology to predict which part of which oil rig will blow up about 4 weeks before it does. That's kind of important. Infosys doesn't know how it works. All that's happened is we've put sensors all over the rig. Temperature sensors, pressure sensors, weather data, wave data. We've got all these data streams coming in, but nobody really knows how to connect those kinds of data streams with events. It's just that when we started, we give all the data to the computer and ask the computer to monitor what was happening. And after about 4 rigs blew up, the computer started to say, alert, alert, alert. It said, alert, 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 we think oil rig at risk. And I said, nah, stupid. And then it blew up. Because the computer was better than we are at spotting the patterns. Actually, I think that's a really good idea. Here's the really big danger, and I need to finish now. Here's the really big danger. Here's an example of it. It's the law of unintended consequence. So you build a fantastic machine that does something that's really good for humankind, and we all say, hallelujah, thank God for that. But it has a twist in the tail which no one quite expected. So here's a big example that's very current to do with fake news and stuff, fake science. So suppose my daughter does a PhD on reasons why people doubt science. Okay, and she decides to do a chapter on climate change skeptics. Okay, and I'm not going to debate whether the science is real or not. I'm just going to say that's what she's asked to do. So she spends ages plundering sites for climate change skepticism. You know, why climate change science is wrong. She keeps typing these things into Google. Google, being a friendly thing, is trying to understand what Caroline's interested in, like, you know, Greek holidays. So next time Caroline types in holidays, she gets Greek holidays coming out, because Google's trying to help her. Because only 5 minutes ago, and for the last 6 weeks, every time Caroline types in holidays, she always types the word Greek. Greek holidays, Greek package holidays, Greek sailing holidays, Greek holidays. So she types in holidays, it's got to be about Greece. So of course Google will give her Greek holidays, and then a few other holidays. So if Caroline, in future, hears about, let's say, an important piece of research that's just been published suggesting that sea levels are going to rise even faster than before. So she types in sea levels. Because Google imagines that actually all she's interested in is skepticism or critiques of theories about sea levels, Google will produce, we're trying to be helpful. So we'll flood her search results with already a devastating critiques, one after the other, of why the latest research that was published yesterday is completely fake news, even though it's supported by 95% of the scientific community globally. Does that make sense? Now, it's only if she scrolls all the way down to the 3rd or the 4th page, she'll discover that actually Google just made a mistake. Caroline was looking for a balanced view of all the work that's been published for and against this particular piece of news, but she was getting an edited view. It's not, oh, AI is taking over the world, it's influencing us. No, it's just a crap piece of programming. It's just a law of unintended consequences, but it can get very serious because robots are already starting to lock human beings right out of the web. It's happening in China. So the state is using its power to decide a social responsibility score for every person in this room, if you live in China, and that will determine the speed at which you're allowed to use the web. So if you start posting things against the government, or you saying nasty things about other people, or you start going to pornography sites, do you know what will happen? They crank down your speed. They halve your internet speed. If you carry on misbehaving, the speed will go down to a crawl. If you go on misbehaving, they'll cut you off altogether until you understand that you use the internet for socially acceptable reasons. Now, actually, in a way, that's not such a bad thing. It's just, but some of you already, oh my goodness, you see, the libertarians in us are struggling with the control and regulation part of us, and it's a big balance, isn't it? But in the meantime, we've got a situation where robots are now being asked by the European Union to take responsibility. So being asked, Facebook is being held to account as a publisher. You must be morally responsible for what you're publishing. The same with YouTube, the same with Google, Twitter, and the rest. If you publish a beheading video, we will take you down. We will sue you, and we will close down your platform. That's what's being threatened to the European Union. So all of a sudden, we're having to use robots to assess all the content on the web. So the robots are having to score every video, and they'll start scoring your YouTube channel. Well, suppose they start scoring my son because he's doing a project on ISIS, and how young people get radicalized in less than 15 minutes from normal, responsible people to someone who wants to go to Syria and behead American soldiers. What happens? What's the process they go through? So my son's been plundering beheading sites, okay? So, I've made that up. They're going to propaganda every single ISIS site he can find to try to understand the problem. And then to see if we can develop a robot to take all those sites down, just like we heard the speaker this morning. We have to go there to do it. Trouble is, he triggered the alerts. I'm making this up, but you can imagine it. Triggered the alerts because he's Facebooking. I've just been looking at some ISIS stuff. Oh, awful stuff. Suddenly, he's a person of interest on Facebook. Facebook's not cut him off yet, but is scoring dangerously high to being his account suspended. Meanwhile, he posted it onto LinkedIn and Twitter, and that was the fatal thing. Twitter was the last straw, because that sent an alert, and Google started looking through the emails, and Google started seeing all kinds of shady stuff. Google trigger, and suddenly, whoop, LinkedIn account has been suspended. Put up your hands if you have a LinkedIn account. Do you know it is impossible now for anyone under the age of 50 to get a new job without them checking you out on LinkedIn for your profile? Did you know that? Absolutely impossible. What will happen to you if your LinkedIn account is frozen because the computer's triggered it? It might, and how will it get out? And the answer is it would be very difficult to get yourself reinstated. You have to talk to a human being to take a quarrel with the robot, and we're not sure why the robot's done it. So I'll just finish with this because I'm out of time. We've had big questions about will robots take over the world and destroy all our wealth. I don't think they will. If we go back 300 years now at the history of the Industrial Revolution, I can tell you this is a well-worn record, and we've been going through it year after year after year. Every time we get a new innovation, there's another wave of jobs that disappears. This is nothing compared to what happened when the mills started to, and the first big factories were created. This is nothing. But what happened? Those people were dislocated, yes. And eventually humankind found out what human beings are best to do. And we found new things for people to do. I mean, I was so blessed by that comment about there's more to work than what you're paid to do. See, there'll be work that you're paid less to do. There'll be work where actually you're retired. There are lots and lots of other ways in which the key is that humans automatically find new ways to make each other happier. Did you know why? Because we're programmed to do so. We're made in the image of God. We're made to bless others, and all our purpose as human beings comes from it. And if someone loses sight of how it is that they improve the lives of those around them, their spirit falls. Actually, I put them on suicide watch quite quickly. If someone's lost all hope and says, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know that I contribute anything to anybody else's lives, sometimes I think the world would be better off if I wasn't here. Wow, this is the death of the life of the person inside. So purpose really, really matters. Whether we're paid for the purpose we have, that's a different matter. But vocation, calling, seizing our destiny. And what is our destiny? Our destiny is to be the people of God we're designed to be, and to help every other human being grab hold of what it is that they're called to do, whether it's looking after someone at home or whether it's clearing up rubbish at the local park. So for me, all science and innovation can be used for good or evil. Robotics and AI is just a clever form of it. And it's an example where, as in every other, potential exists for tremendous good, but also for abuse. And that's why this conference is so important. Thank you.